So we're going to start a tutorial on how to make rocks for your diorama or train layout or what have you. I'm going to be using molds that come from Woodland Scenic. These are made out of some kind of rubber material. You can get lots of different shapes. We have a thin one with some like sandstone type rock. We have another one with looks like some more like limestone. And we got another one here that looks a little bit more like some real sedimentary rock or maybe some shale or something like that. And anyway, these things work really well. They recommend using a lightweight hydrocoal, but I like to use regular plaster Paris mostly because it's a lot cheaper. And for the size of the rocks I'm making, detail will not be as important as, let's say, you had an N-scale layout. I'm doing what would be O-scale, or close to roughly 1/50th is what I'm working with. So larger rock formations are what I need, less detail is needed. What you'll need plaster Paris, something to mix it in. I use the bottom half of a milk jug, something to stir it up with, rock molds, and water. I recommend getting a couple different rock molds, different shapes, but try and make sure that you get something that will work with whatever you're trying to achieve in the end for your layout. So first we'll go ahead and figure out, it's going to take some trial and error to figure out how much plaster of Paris you need, but make sure you give yourself plenty. Last thing you want to have happen is that you run out. That'll put a damper on your day's project. So put plenty in there, and we'll probably make about 1.5 rock molds maybe today with that amount of plaster. Then we'll go ahead and add in some water. And a lot of people like to measure this out. I like to do it by feel. What you're looking for is a consistency that's not too thick. And right now we can see we're a little bit dry right now, so we just keep adding water until we get to a consistency that it's not real runny, but it is fluid. And you want to work with some haste here. This stuff does set up fairly quickly. Now this plaster of Paris I think sets up in about a half hour or so. You probably have about 5 minutes working time with it or so. So we're getting there. Just a little bit more water in there. And a little more water. Try and show you the consistency that we're looking for here. It's hard to tell you what it's like. Some people call it close to like pancake batter. I think it's a little bit thicker than pancakes, if you know what pancakes are. So we go ahead and mix it up pretty good there, and kind of see what it looks like in there. Pretty thick. Still got a couple dry spots. We need to add some water for those. And I don't recommend mixing up a lot unless you're really going to go for some serious rock molding, just because the more you mix up, the less time you have to work with it. So this is about as much as I ever mix up. So. There we go. You can see what we've got to work with now. So, all right, now we're going to go ahead and pour it into our molds here. Some people like to pre-treat their molds with soapy water. Just mist some of that on there. I haven't had any success with that helping me with releasing the rocks from the molds, so I don't do that. Anyway, go ahead and start filling them up here. I always like to make sure you just put plenty in each mold for what you're going to be working on. And the bigger the mold, the more material it's going to take. So that's something I always like to think about when I'm buying molds is, you know, how much material is it going to take to fill up this mold? Because you can get, especially with a layout that's going to be as large as mine, for scale, you can put a lot of plaster of Paris into something. Blast out of my bowl here. Try not to waste a ton of it. Alright. A little bit left. Alright. Now that once you have it in your mold there, what I like to do is just go ahead and take your mold and just kind of tap it on the table a little bit. What that'll do is make sure that the plaster sets into all the crevices. It also helps release some of the air bubbles that form inside there. Jiggle it around a little bit. And then I usually like to let it set for about 4 hours. Some people let it set for less time than that. I like to let it set for 4 hours. I'm trying to get the mold set so it sits somewhat level there. Alright, and we'll come back in about 4 hours. So now it's time to extract our rock from our mold. So you can see the plaster's all set up here. So what I like to do with it is I just like to slowly start working around the edge and start pulling it away, starting at the edge. If you try and just, you know, pull it back all the way, sometimes you might just break your whole rock. I've done that. It's not too pleasant. Keep working around the edge. Sometimes these corners that are a little deeper, you can see right here we've got a little deeper of an impression. It's a little bit more difficult to remove those. But you leave the hardest spot for last, and see now we've got it started. Now it'll just keep coming out here. And it's out. Looks like rocks, and you just clean up the rest of this flash and you just break it off. So there you go. Next up we'll be placing them on the board. Alright, today we're going to have the second part of the rock making video. How to make your own rocks for scale model layouts and dioramas. So since you've last seen the rocks, we were casting all the rocks here. I have now affixed them. I just use the same plaster of Paris to fix to whatever base system you're using. Mine is just cardboard and wood. So we go ahead and fix the rocks in a very random pattern. Even though this is all one rock mold, you can see there's some various different variations. You flip them upside down, break them in half, what have you. So what we're going to be making to color the rocks, which is the next major step here, is what are called washes. If you can take a look at this here, it's basically just a really watery paint is all it is. And you don't want to get this too thick, because you can always add more layers of washes. No matter how many times it takes to add wash layers, you want to add, if it takes 10 layers of wash to cover your rock face, so be it. So I'll show you what we do to make the wash. I get some clear cups like this, and we take acrylic paint. And I just get the acrylic paint at a hobby store, just the little tins of it. It doesn't take very much of this paint to do what we need to do. And usually we start out with a nice light color on these. I want to go ahead and show you how I mix up a little bit of black here. We don't want to put very much in there, just a little bit. Especially this black, it goes a long ways. Put that in there. Mix it up with some water. You can see on the sides of the glass, it's not sticking, it's not super thick. Now, this process is pretty easy. All we do is take a foam brush. These are like 49-cent foam brushes at the hardware store. And we just basically take our wash and dab it onto the rocks. So we'll start off with our light colored wash. You want to start off with your light color. Dip it in the material here and just dab it on the rocks. And just be messy about it. It's not going to hurt the rocks any. Alright. And the thinner the wash is, the lighter the color will be. The thicker the wash is, the darker the color will be. And I'm going to go for a very gray color on this, so I'm adding just a little bit of brown so it doesn't look too steel-like, I guess. I don't know. You can just play around with this. It's kind of fun. But that's all there is to it. And you can add different colors. The black will bring out a lot of the details in the rock. The grays will help accentuate larger areas. And that's step 2 of building your own rocks. It's not too terribly difficult. If you have any questions, let me know.